No one expected Cassini's final moments to haunt us. When it plunged into Saturn's atmosphere in 2017, it was supposed to be the end of a long, beautiful journey, a graceful farewell to a machine that had given us so much. The world watched, grateful for every image, every secret it had pulled from the shadows of that distant world. We thought we had seen all Saturn had to offer, but years later, long after the applause had faded and Cassini's ashes had scattered into Saturn's golden clouds, something stirred. In the quiet halls of a private research lab, far from the cameras, a machine with a mind unlike any we had ever built, a quantum intelligence, was sifting through Cassini's final photographs. And in those fading glimpses of Saturn's skies, it saw something no human eye had ever noticed. It wasn't a moon or a storm or the glint of sunlight off the rings. It was something stranger, too strange. A whisper of shapes hidden in the turbulence, patterns that did not belong there. They weren't random. They weren't natural. They were precise, deliberate, almost alive. Back when Cassini was still young, the spacecraft had been our silent poet, sending back visions of a world more alien and beautiful than we'd ever imagined. It gave us Titan's methane seas and the frozen geysers of Enceladus. It showed us storms that lasted decades in a hexagon at the North Pole so perfect in its geometry, it seemed like the work of a god. Even in its last months when its fuel ran low, Cassini dared to dive between Saturn's rings and its cloud tops, into a place no machine had ever gone, sending back images so close, so detailed, you could almost feel the winds. The mission ended not with a bang, but with a breathless plunge. The signal from Cassini faded, and with it, our eyes on Saturn. We told ourselves we had learned everything worth knowing, that the story was over. But in the years that followed, those final images, the ones no one had really studied in depth, sat quietly in NASA's archives. They were beautiful, but they were just weather, just clouds, just Saturn being Saturn, or so everyone thought. The truth is, some scientists did notice oddities, barely their shapes, strange symmetries that seemed to hold their form for far too long in an atmosphere that should have torn them apart. Ratios, repeating angles, echoes that appeared in more than one frame. But without the right tools to decode them, those whispers in the clouds were dismissed. Camera glitches, data hiccups, the human mind's tendency to see faces in clouds. And so, the anomalies were buried. Not deliberately, but under the sheer weight of more important data. Years passed, technology evolved, and then came quantum AI, a kind of thinking machine that could see relationships between pieces of data we couldn't even comprehend. Where a human would see only pixels, the AI could read the subtle fingerprints of mathematics itself, woven into the noise. Cassini's forgotten photos became a test run, a simple project to clean up old imperfect images. But the AI did more than sharpen them. It peeled back the turbulence of Saturn's clouds and found order. Not just order, but intention. Across multiple images, taken at different times and from different angles, it revealed something constant, a shape that changed and yet remained the same, as if it was moving. A structure built not of matter, but of numbers, ratios, sequences, geometry that whispered of intelligence. The team thought it was a glitch in the AI. They checked and rechecked, feeding in random data to see if it would invent patterns where none existed. But no, every time the same structure emerged. Something in Saturn's clouds had been speaking in a language of mathematics, and Cassini had heard it in its final hours. At first, the patterns were faint, barely a murmur, but as Cassini drew closer, they became sharper, stronger. In the final day, they grew almost fevered in their complexity, as if something out there had realized its time was running out and was making one last desperate attempt to be heard before the silence came. One researcher stared at the final processed images for hours, hardly blinking, before whispering the words that would chill the room. Either we've found a natural phenomenon beyond our understanding, or something was there, watching Cassini, watching us. At first, no one wanted to believe it. It's one thing to find beauty in the clouds of Saturn, another to believe those clouds are speaking to you. But the deeper the team dug, the harder it became to pretend these patterns were just tricks of light and wind. The AI didn't just find symmetry, it found meaning. Numbers threaded through the turbulence with impossible precision. Prime numbers, counted out like footsteps. Spirals drawn to the exact proportions of the golden ratio. Patterns that mirrored the digits of pi carried out to a dozen decimal places, as if someone, or something, wanted to be sure we understood this was no accident. For centuries, scientists have believed that if an alien intelligence ever reached out to us, they'd use mathematics. Numbers don't depend on language. They are universal, the same everywhere in the cosmos. The Voyager probes carried them into the void as our own way of saying, we are here. We are intelligent. Now in Saturn's clouds, the same universal markers were looking back at us. When the team ran the AI across more of Cassini's images from those last weeks, the patterns began to tell a story. Early in the spacecraft's approach, the shapes were faint, almost hidden, but with each passing day they sharpened, evolving, layering complexity upon complexity, as though someone were adjusting the volume of a whisper until it became a voice. And then something even stranger emerged. The patterns seemed to react to Cassini. When the spacecraft shifted its position or adjusted its instruments, the clouds responded. Subtle changes, but deliberate, like a conversation carried on in a language made of storms. One repeating sequence, when mapped in 3 dimensions, created a shape unlike anything found in nature. A perfect mathematical form, flawless in its proportions, standing out against the chaos of Saturn's atmosphere. The team nicknamed it the Key. They didn't know what it unlocked. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. But there was no denying the unsettling truth. This was not random. And yet, a question hung over every discovery. Why Saturn? Why hide in the swirling clouds of this massive, distant world? The answer, when it came, only deepened the unease. Saturn is full of puzzles, even without Cassini's patterns. It burns with more heat than it should, as though something inside it is alive with energy. Its magnetic field is perfectly aligned with its rotation, so perfect it shouldn't even be possible. And its rings, those impossible, shimmering rings, filled with strange ripples and braids no simulation can explain. The AI revealed that the patterns Cassini captured were not scattered at random. They aligned with specific places, the planet's magnetic blind spots, regions where our instruments had always failed to get clean readings. If you wanted to hide something in plain sight, Saturn's atmosphere and magnetic field were a masterwork of camouflage. Whoever, or whatever, had placed those messages knew our weaknesses. They knew where we wouldn't look. They may have been there for decades, maybe longer, waiting for us to bring a machine close enough, precise enough, to finally see them. And then, there was the missing frame. Cassini's final descent was supposed to capture 12 images in quick succession. 11 came through perfectly. The 12th, the very last photograph Cassini ever took, was different. The data packet was intact, but the image itself, unreadable. Not corrupted in the way damaged files usually are, but scrambled in a way no known decoding process could fix. It was as if the picture had been locked with a key we don't yet have. The timing was impossible to ignore. The 11th image had shown the most complex patterns yet, their mathematical precision almost screaming for recognition. That 12th frame should have been the crescendo, but it remained dark to us, as if someone had slammed a door just as we were about to step through. Some on the team whispered their theories when they thought no one was listening. Maybe the image had been encoded deliberately, meant to be unlocked only when we were ready. Or maybe it was hidden because it showed something so clear, so undeniable, that no one could dismiss it as coincidence. Something that would leave no doubt at all. It was supposed to be over. The data had been collected, the findings logged, and their reports quietly prepared for public release. Sanitized, softened, and stripped of anything that might cause undue concern. That's how it usually worked. The truth rarely arrived unfiltered. But this time, something went wrong. Somewhere in that chain of control, a crack appeared, and through it, the raw, unedited truth leaked out. And when it did, Those who saw it realized why NASA had been holding it back. The images, if you could even call them that, were unlike anything the human eye had seen from Neptune before. No clean, postcard blue globe. No smooth bands or gentle swirls. Instead, the pictures revealed a surface broken and fractured, as though immense forces had been tearing at the planet from within. Strange, shadow-like structures cut across its atmosphere, moving in ways that made no sense. And then, there were the lights. They were faint, scattered, and shifting in impossible patterns. Too regular to be storms, too structured to be random. It was as if someone, or something, was signaling. Not a flare of lightning, not a reflection from the sun, something else entirely. One senior researcher, speaking only under the condition of anonymity, described it in a single sentence. It looked like the planet was awake and watching us. But the deeper the team dug into the data, the stranger it became. Those strange lights weren't just in the atmosphere. They seemed to originate beneath it, deep in Neptune's hidden layers. They weren't simply bright points. They were patterns repeating like a code. And the tremors picked up by the probes weren't random seismic events. They lined up perfectly with the flashes, as though the planet was pulsing with some kind of rhythm. Then came the most disturbing discovery of all. The magnetic field around Neptune was changing, not slowly, like normal planetary cycles, but in violent, erratic swings. It was almost as if something massive was moving beneath the surface, pushing against the field from inside. It didn't take long for whispers to start inside the agency. Words like artificial, construct, habitat, and the most unnerving of them all, prison. If that's what it was, who or what had been trapped there? And why was the prison suddenly showing signs of breaking open? Publicly, NASA and other space agencies stayed silent. The official line was that Neptune was experiencing unusual atmospheric activity and natural magnetic anomalies. But behind closed doors, the story was different. The data was being shared only among a select group. Meetings stretched late into the night. Some voices in the room pushed for further investigation. Others argued, sometimes heatedly, that humanity wasn't ready for what we might find. The stakes were far bigger than anyone on Earth had prepared for. Because the more the data was studied, the more it became clear that whatever was stirring inside Neptune wasn't just waking up, it was communicating. And if those patterns truly were a message, they weren't just meant for us,